Thank you very much, Chairman. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. It is very. I have to express my gratitude first because I'm invited in this meeting, and in this session, I would like to present about the maybe general situation about the treatment of aneurysm in Indonesia. As the speakers before explained us about the complex treatment, advanced treatment of aneurysm, I would like to just sharing our experience regarding the management of aneurysm. I think for the introduction, most of us have known that the definition of aneurysm is a localized abnormal blood field dilatation in the wall of blood vessel, usually in the artery, and there are 3.2% of unruptured intracranial aneurysm in the world with female preponderance, and if the unruptured aneurysm ruptured, it will cause the subarachnoid hemorrhage, and it can be very devastating. There are four basic types of intracranial aneurysm: circular aneurysm, microaneurysm, giant aneurysm, and also fusiform aneurysm. We also do have some special cases like giant serpentine aneurysm, dissecting aneurysm, and also blood blister aneurysm. Most of our cases, we found circular aneurysm. And these are the risk factors, the condition that weaken the arterial that causing aneurysm, like hypertension, and then smoking, which are very prevalent in our country, and then atherosclerotic disease, infective endocarditis, and systemic infection, which also we found quite often, and then connective tissue disorder, and then polycystic kidney disease, coarctation of the aorta, and also the cerebral AVM. And this picture shows us the prevalence of the aneurysm, mostly in the internal carotid artery, followed by the MCA, and then PCOM, and then ACOM. Usually, the unruptured intracranial aneurysm often asymptomatic and found incidentally. If there is a symptom, it should be headache or mass effect symptoms caused by the aneurysm, which compress the brain. And if the aneurysm going ruptured, there will be a thunderclap headache, which is the hallmark of the ruptured symptom, and ruptured intracranial aneurysm may be followed by vomiting, and then meningismus, and decreased consciousness, seizures, and vocal deficit. And if that happen when the aneurysm ruptured, there will be devastating complication like vasospasm, delayed cerebral ischemia, and stroke, and hydrocephalus, seizure, and also it could be cause death of the patient. And how about the aneurysmal condition in our country? In Indonesia, the aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage account for 4.2% in the prevalence, and the mortality caused by the aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage is very high, around 20.8 to 53%, and this is the highest mortality rate even in Southeast Asia. And that's why we try very hard to overcome this problem. And our institution, University of Indonesia, we have two teaching hospital, Cipto Mangunkusumo Hospital, which located in the central part of Jakarta. We have quite big hospital with 3 cath labs and one hybrid OT with around 4 neurointerventionists. And also we have University of Indonesia Hospital located around 20 kilometers from Cipto Mangunkusumo Hospital in the suburban area, southern part of Jakarta. And this hospital also have quite big, a lot of beds, around 1,000 beds, and we have two cath lab, and we have around 3 neurointervention dedicated for doing interventional neurology. And this how we manage the aneurysm cases in our hospital. as we know that if we talk about the management, we can divide into conservative and interventional management, and interventional management can be divided into surgical and endovascular. Conservative management usually appropriate for if estimated rupture risk is lower than the procedural risk, and we use the FACIS score to calculate the rupture risk estimation. And usually in the small incidental aneurysm and the aneurysm located in the anterior circulation, the annual rupture risk is very low. But if the aneurysm getting large, it could increase the risk of the rupture. And this is the scoring system that we use to differentiate which cases should be intervened or which case should be just follow up. We use ELAPSE scoring system for aneurysmal growth and also the FACIS scoring system for the risk of aneurysmal rupture. And the mainstay treatment of conservative management is risk factor modification like smoking cessation. It is very strongly recommended as the prevalence of smoker in our country is very, very large. So we have to advise the patient to stop smoking, and then the hypertension should be treated and controlled, and also the cardiovascular risk reduction should be addressed, like lifestyle modification and then vascular risk management using hypertension drug or diabetes drugs. And for conservative management, we do the imaging surveillance. Usually we do the follow-up imaging 6 to 12 months after the diagnosis. And if the aneurysm remains stable, then we do the next follow-up 1 to 2 years. But if the aneurysm grows, then we discuss to the patient, we discuss with, also with the family whether the patient want to do the intervention or not. And this is the case which we perform conservative management. The mycotic aneurysm usually caused by the infection of the endocarditis. This is the 50-year-old male patient came to the hospital with a seizure and decreased consciousness. Before the onset, he suffered from headache over the last week, and then he has a history of hypertension and also severe mitral regurgitation and also nephrolithiasis. And this is what we found on initial CT, and also we consult cardiologists to evaluate the cardiac condition and found the endocarditis with regurgitation. And then we performed the brain MRI. We found multiple small aneurysm, but we can see here in the left side in the anterior circulation, and then we decide to give the conservative and symptomatic management to the patient, symptomatic treatment, and also the antibiotics. The second measure that we use to treat aneurysm is surgical clipping. We have also quite good, very good and strong neurosurgeon team. They perform microsurgical clipping, and as we know that microsurgical clipping, as Professor Sin said, that is a very effective treatment for the unruptured aneurysm selected for repair, have long-term durability, higher complete occlusion, and lower recurrence or retreatment than endovascular coiling. And endovascular treatment may have lower perioperative morbidity and mortality, but this comes at the cost of higher recurrence and also very costly because we have also consider the cost of the treatment to the patient if we want to perform endovascular treatment. For aneurysm suitable for either modality, the overall risk of poor functional outcome from surgical clipping is around 3.6 to 4.2%, and the post-operative imaging to confirm the obliteration should be performed after the operation, and follow-up imaging usually we do 3 to 12 months after the surgical. And how about the endovascular therapy? We perform simple coiling and then stent-assisted coiling and also flow diversion. Most of the cases we perform simple coiling because the problem of reimbursement of the insurance quite difficult to have the approval for stent coiling, and then almost very difficult, almost impossible to have acceptance for flow diversion. As we heard from the lecture before, endovascular coiling is an established treatment option for selected intracranial aneurysm and often preferred when open surgery is expected to carry higher procedural risk. And from the meta-analysis, the latest meta-analysis showed that the aneurysm recurrence after endovascular coiling was around 40% across 23 studies. And the report of re-hemorrhage rate after coiling in the range of 0.6 to 2.6%. And in the systematic review 3 years ago in 2023 by Fauzi et al., they found that the mortality rate of endovascular coiling around 2.3%, the retreatment around 3.4%, and the post-procedural complication around 15 to 0.7%. And the imaging follow-up is very mandatory to this procedure. This is the case. We have a 53-year-old woman with severe headache, pulsatile type with numeric rating scale, the pain scale around 8 to 9, accompanied by left eyelid closure and nausea, vomiting, which not improved to medication. And then perform brain CT, found subarachnoid hemorrhage, and then referred to other hospital, perform brain MRA and DSA, the aneurysm was found, and then referred to our hospital for coiling. After the procedure, the headache improved and the patient have no symptoms at all. And 6 months after coiling, we perform brain CT. This is the timeline of the patient, perform MRA, found sacral aneurysm, and then DSA was performed, and then from the DSA we found aneurysm in the ICA, and then we do the coiling, and then this is the CTA post coiling 6 months after the procedure. This is the device we use. We perform coiling with simple coiling, and then this is the angiography after the coiling. Okay, another measure of treatment is stent-assisted coiling. Stent-assisted coiling is primarily used for wide neck intracranial aneurysm, typically defined as neck more than 4 millimeter, or the aneurysm which have dome to neck ratio less than 2. In unruptured aneurysm, SAC or stent-assisted coiling is a valid endovascular option, but we have to avoid the use of stent-assisted coiling in the acute phase of ruptured aneurysm. According to the meta-analysis, the success rate of stent-assisted coiling is quite good. It have almost 100% technical success with 4% overall neurologic complication, including stroke, 0.02 mortality, and 7% recanalization, and 0.4 lead rupture. In the prospective multi-center cohort and also in the meta-analysis, the immediate complete occlusion around 78%, and then the complete obliteration after the follow-up around 70% with a procedural complication around 5%. And this is our case of stent-assisted coiling. We have a 73-year-old female admitted to the emergency department with loss of consciousness and diagnosed with subarachnoid hemorrhage. And then we found the wide neck aneurysm from the MRA. And then we treat the patient conservatively around 3 weeks, and then after the condition stable, we perform the stent-assisted coiling. And this is the imaging which show the wide neck aneurysm. Okay, this is the angiogram of the aneurysm of the procedure when we perform the stent-assisted coiling to the patient. This is after the procedure, and then this is the picture post-procedure and the device that we use at that time. And the last measure which we use to treat brain aneurysm in our hospital is using flow diversion. We learned a lot from previous lecture about the indication of flow diverter, which is mostly for wide neck aneurysm or large or giant aneurysm or complex shape aneurysm, or can be used also in the recurrent or previously treated aneurysm. And the complete occlusion rate and also the complication rate is quite good, acceptable, especially in the last meta-analysis using SURPASS devices. The technical success rate was almost 100%, 98%, and the mortality rate is just 2.7% with morbidity 6% and complete occlusion 75% at 6 months. In acute phase, just like stent-assisted coiling, flow diversion should be avoided generally because we have to give double antiplatelet after the procedure. It will increase the risk of rebleeding to the patient, which can worsen the outcome of the patient. And this is our case, maybe just several months ago, 55 years old female with chief complaint of severe headache prior to the admission. The patient referred to our hospital with severe headache with pain scale around 7, accompanied with vomiting, and the patient have uncontrolled hypertension. From the angiogram, we found the patient have wide neck aneurysm, and then we decide to perform the flow diversion, but the procedure performed 6 months after the patient suffered from the subarachnoid hemorrhage. This is the brain imaging. We can see the subarachnoid hemorrhage on the bilateral insula and also in the in the ventricle. And this is the brain MRA showing the aneurysm at left ICA, left MCA bifurcation with size 5 times 4 millimeter. And this is the angiography when we do the procedure. We found the wide neck aneurysm, and then we calculate the aneurysm, the size around 5 times 4, and then the parent artery vessel, the proximal diameter is 3.4, the distal diameter is 3.08, and the estimated target length around 12.3. And then we also check the patency of the left PCOM, and then this is the result of the evaluation. And after that, we do the flow diversion. This is the pre-deployment picture, and then in the middle is the deployment picture, and the right side is when the patient have a complete deployment. This is the device that we use at that time. And this patient, then we do the follow-up. We perform brain CT as post-procedural imaging 1 day after the procedure, and we see that the flow diversion was not collapsed, extending from the distal ICA to C7 to C6. Sorry, to MCA. Yeah. Okay, this is the conclusion of my presentation. The aneurysm is a major health problem with high risk of devastating intracranial bleeding and also the complication. The mortality rate in our country reached from 20 to almost 54%, the highest in the Southeast Asia region. And the Common types of cerebral aneurysm we face are saccular, microaneurysm, giant aneurysm, and fusiform. And the management, we can give the conservative management or surgical or endovascular intervention. And our hospital can deliver all kinds of brain aneurysm management, including surgical clipping and also endovascular intervention with coiling, stent-assisted coil, and flow diversion. Unfortunately, we haven't performed the flow disruptor using web. That's also because of the reimbursement problem from the insurance. Thank you very much.